Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Lewis. I'm with Lewis Strategic, and I'm very pleased to be working with the Pennsylvania Gigabit Revolution. This is our third meeting this week. We're covering 6 counties with our project, from Bucks County to Adams County, Pennsylvania. We've got a lot of great updates to provide today. And before we get started, I want to give Commissioner Leinbach an opportunity to give a welcome from Berks County. Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Kelly, and thank you to United Fiber and Data. This is a very interesting time, especially for me. I was in the private sector up until the end of 2007, and in the private sector, I was vice president of a local advertising agency with a heavy involvement in internet design, web hosting, programming, and one of the big things that we often talked about was balancing the cutting edge with the bleeding edge. And that hasn't changed. And in some respects, the process that we are seeing take place here is a process that is necessary before governments, businesses, residents actually spend dollars on technology, spend dollars on the gigabit revolution, if you will. We need to first understand what the marketplace looks like, what the opportunity is, what the threats may also be. So I'm looking forward very much to seeing the results of this study. Later on this month, we'll be seeing the results of the RFP that is out, but I want to thank Kelly Lewis for his leadership, United Fiber and Data, and I also want to thank a number of our local partners. We've been in a variety of meetings with the Berks Municipal Partnership, our county CIO, county planning, the BCIU, and the 18 school districts have been very active, involved. Greater Reading Economic Partnership, which is represented here today, BCTV. There are a number of partners looking at this very closely from both the governmental side, but also economic development and the private sector. So I welcome everyone to Berks County. Berks County is very pleased to be part of this multi-county effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. You are spot on. This is a process that's going on around the United States and around the world to try and find that competitive advantage for a local economy, a county economy, a state economy, and national economies. And what you're going to learn today is some of the different things going on in the broadband world around the United States. And I really want you to pay attention to what's going on pricing-wise. Our study has uncovered some pricing around the 6-county region, and it's staggering how much our region is overpaying compared to national broadband rates. You're going to see leadership at the K through 12 side, where these intermediate units and school districts have been doing broadband aggregation for 12 years. And the result of the 12 years has driven down pricing across school districts dramatically, and you'll see it in John's report. We, as a group, are trying to figure out what's the best strategy for municipalities, for counties, and for the state of Pennsylvania to make ourselves attractive to broadband investment, to figure out the best tactics and strategies for each county. Every county in Pennsylvania is very different. It's very interesting for us to have experience now across the 6 counties. They're so different. They've all got great strengths. All have some challenges that they can overcome. And part of our project's figuring out how do we data mine it, how do we figure out how to strengthen some things in each county as it relates to broadband investment. We got great broadband companies in this state, some of the biggest of brand names in the world, and some smaller ones that are competing at a very high level against those large competitors. What we're trying to do with this project is bring them in, give them an opportunity through our RFP to compete on a level playing field and try and win business in the 6-county region. That's the game plan. We've got several things going on in this project. United Fiber and Data is a company based in York. They've got a great update that Bernadette is going to provide in a moment. And they're building a fiber line from New York City to Ashburn, Virginia, two gigantic data center rich areas. New York City is obvious. Ashburn, Virginia is where gigantic data centers are located. In particular, to most of us in this room, that's where Microsoft and that's where Google are located with big data centers. So for school districts, that's a very attractive pathway to backhaul data down to those data centers, as is true with companies. So United Fiber is building this line, and the Pennsylvania government got very strategic with a fund that's called the Broadband Outreach and Aggregation Fund and said if they're building this line and it's coming through 6 counties, how do we optimize the opportunities for those counties as it relates to this fiber and all the existing fiber that's already in the ground and on poles in each county. Probably at least maybe $500 million to $1 billion in each county has already been invested in broadband infrastructure in each county. It's up on the wires. You all have phones on the towers, the wireless towers. It's incredible investment that's already been done in each county, but as you're going to learn, pricing matters too. So we have an RFP on the street. Delaware Strategies, you could talk to Jim Frank about the RFP. It had 200 companies in the RFP. It's one of the biggest RFPs of its kind in the country. And we're very excited. 24 different providers took the RFP. It's one of the largest responses that we've ever had in the 12 years that we've been doing these kinds of RFPs. So very, very excited to see what happens on April 29th. We're going to come back in May and June. In Reading, it'll be May 17th and June 21st to have meetings and talk about the RFP results and how it relates to each company. And we'll talk through all the questions. We'll have an ask and answer session so that companies can say, well, what does this mean? How does it impact our organization? So we're excited to be doing that, and we'll figure out some different ways to make that great. The other thing that we've done in this is done engineering studies that are in your technology action plans. You're going to receive them when you walk out. If you were one of the organizations that requested one, there'll be one for you in the back. If you didn't get a technology action plan but you're interested, please see me afterwards and we'll work out a strategy to get one done for you. We've done 204. I've worked a lot of hours to get all those done, but there's some great information inside them as it relates to engineering maps to each organization that all roll up into a county-wide technology action plan that the commissioner actually had a chance to see last night. Very interesting to see all the different, what we call dots on the map, but all the different organizations on where they are located and where existing wires are located. And John's engineering ties it all together. So that's the project. And I want to give Bernadette an opportunity to give a UFD update on their great news as they're moving close to crossing the Delaware. So Bernadette.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Kelly said, I'm Bernadette. I work in community outreach for United Fiber and Data. Pleased to be here today. Thank you for joining us in the Gigabit Revolution. We said we'd be back, and we are here. We were here in January. A little bit of the weather was kind of a threat, but we made it in January, and we're glad to have a little bit more of a turnout today as well as we give out our technology action plans. We have some updates to share, some next steps, and we have visited with each of these communities in our study, and we realized just how great Pennsylvania is. I'm proud of the work these communities are accomplishing that we've visited. And with that, we actually have a publication that really kind of shows all of the, our publication, as you will see, when you take the time to read about it, the discoveries at the Biotech Center in Bucks County to the innovative Rodale Institute and more. So take the time to read for yourself all the information that our great state, especially the eastern side of the state, is working on right now in innovation. And as part of the study, we conducted surveys in each of the communities. And here's a sampling of, I'm sorry, I forgot to grab So here's a sampling of some of the results, some more notable than others, but for the most part, a lot of the results So a lot of the results were similar in some of the communities. This one, for instance, among 600 respondents, 60% had no knowledge of what gigabit speed internet is, nor what the possibilities are when you have access to this type of internet. So even the 21st century infrastructure that we're building, a lot of people don't have any realization of what this can do for their everyday lives, for their businesses, for school, education. And that's over half of the people surveyed. Another interesting fact was out of the 600 residents in the select cities, 87% have access to internet. So 13% we still have to reach. We're doing a good job at digital inclusion and reaching out and letting people know about all this. But to think about the internet that we have access to every day, there are 13% of the people in the communities that we surveyed that actually don't have access. It could be homebound, it could be because they're in rural areas. So we still have some work to do on digital inclusion. I'd like to share a map of the gigabit communities in Pennsylvania. You'll note some of the more popular one that we hear about is the Chattanooga one in Tennessee and Kansas City, Missouri. Look at the eastern part of Pennsylvania. We're really missing, we have a gap of gigabit communities, and we hope to fill that very soon. And even Alaska has one. So some of the follow-up I'd like to talk about, the next steps, what would they be? We gave a call to action sheet at the sign-in table. We'd like you to take that with. There are people on there that you can contact. What the next steps will be about is keeping the conversation going, talking to your neighbors, talking to educators in your community, elected officials, and we look forward to seeing you in May and June at some of the follow-up meetings so we can give you more resources if you need them to reach out. We want to work at connecting these dots in Pennsylvania for the gigabit cities. Another milestone that United Fiber and Data realized was on February 18th, we crossed the Hudson when we reached the milestone for running the fiber from New York City to New Jersey. Now today we're well on our way through New Jersey, and we're very excited to say that early summer we will be in Pennsylvania. So we hope that everyone will follow us on Facebook, on all of our social media, our website as well, because we'd like to keep you up to date on what the anticipation is for the reality of this infrastructure in Pennsylvania. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernadette. I'm excited for the crossing to Delaware. I just was at Washington Crossings on Sunday, soccer dad stuff, and I was like, that's going to be so great when UFD crosses to Delaware, and when you come into Berks County, we'll have a meeting for that. That'll be fabulous. There just hasn't been a lot of new broadband investment like UFD in like 10 years, not just in the country, but globally after the telecommunications industry had some challenges in 2008. So I want to set the stage for John. We did this survey, part of its feasibility study, part of its look at the landscape across the 6-county region. So we did some pricing work. And if you take the best price that we got in the 6-county region, that includes some pretty big counties in Pennsylvania, right? The best price that we got is 17 times more expensive than the lowest price in 7 American cities. 17 times. And when you put that against a gigabit, it's about $110,000 more a year to buy a gigabit in 6 counties in Pennsylvania versus other American cities. That's a very big competitive disadvantage for our companies and for our schools and for our governments. So that's what this project's about. We're going to talk about strategies not just today, but this is a process on how to figure out to get our prices down from 17 times higher. So I want to introduce the engineer of the project, John Dolmich. He works with Big Wireless. The work they've done has been amazing. They've been working 7 days a week for quite a few months to get this all done, so I want to introduce John.
As Kelly said, my name's John Dolmich. I'm actually the president and CIO of Big Wireless, and my team was really tasked with, the engineering effort behind this, and coming up with, something that is very tangible, something that we can put some cost estimates to bring a more reality to it. And what I really want you to do and pay attention as I get to some of the numbers, because from a build perspective and from a county cost perspective, it may look staggering, but when I get to the end of the presentation, as Kelly said, what we're paying as Central PA residents and businesses here for internet is actually a travesty, and you're going to see it. I mean, the numbers don't lie, which is really nice about being an engineer. We're basically quantitative. Okay, we don't make anything up. We just collect all the data and we present it as it is. So what we did, we were basically tasked with looking at 6 different communities. And when we say communities, that's what was part of the grant proposal, which was basically Doylestown, Pottstown, Reading, York, Ephrata, and Hanover. We actually expanded that during the project because we had a lot of interest from other communities like Gettysburg and Adams County. So at no cost to them, we included them in the project because we think Central PA needs to be looked at as a region and not individual communities. So what we did is, this is the project overview, and you can see all these dots, and you can see the vast expanse that we basically covered from an engineering perspective. And what we did is we took all the respondents that requested technology action plans as our starting point. And as Kelly said, we had 204. Well, we didn't want to just stop at 204. We said, if we have 204 organizations, we want to take our local knowledge and add in the other organizations that didn't request technology action plans, but we knew that they were potential large buyers of broadband or that they were a technology company. And what we did is we actually analyzed Central Pennsylvania's existing utility. And when I say utility, that means basically telecommunications and utility poles, ones that exist. We wanted to make it very easy if we were going to create an engineering design that says this is buildable. The poles exist. You don't have to go under a river. You don't have to cross railways. These things exist. There's telecommunication infrastructure on 1,200 aerial miles of fiber that we've already identified. And what we did is we took all those 500 organizations and we created the most efficient route to pass by and connect all those organizations. If, for example, one of these RFP respondents wanted to take this, we've already done the legwork for them. And what we did is we did it at the county and community level, and then within each company technology action plan, which I don't have those maps on here, we've showed that organization the closest pole that they need to connect to get that fiber to them, and their upstream and downstream neighbors that requested technology action plans and how to connect to them, and all the organizations that they could connect to or would be part of that build in a 7-mile radius around them. So the company plans have the most detailed localized maps in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the ones basically just for Berks County. So when we looked at Berks County, we essentially came up with 75 organizations. That's a combination of organizations that requested technology action plans and ones that we identified. Now, when I say organizations, what we didn't do, because we don't have all that information readily at our fingertips, and really, we initially were just going to look at people who requested technology action plans, is we didn't look at every building within an organization. For example, the county's got tons of buildings. They got police departments, they got courts, they got all kinds of stuff. So these maps and these dots don't even include all those buildings. They essentially include, the main organization, because that's what we really started with. So in Berks County, we identified 75 organizations, and to reach all those organizations, it would require 85 aerial miles of fiber to do that. Pretty straightforward. Then what we did is we basically broke it down into regions within the county. And again, Reading being one of those communities, within each one of these counties, we did a more detailed study of that actual community that we were supposed to do. And what's really interesting is that half of the organizations that we identified or requested technology action plans are within this boundary of Reading. And you can see there's a heavy concentration of dots. Anytime you're in telecommunications, the more heavily the concentration of potential participants is, the less it costs per participant to be able to build an infrastructure. So to reach these 37 organizations requires about 50 aerial miles of fiber to do. So if somebody wanted to build it, there's their plan. Those pink routes show you how to run the fiber, tells you exactly how to do it. The other heavy concentration is in the Northwest Berks area, which if you remember I said 75, we had 75 organizations. The other one was 37. Here we have 27. Okay, so this is, again, not quite half, but heavily concentrated. And this one, 27 organizations, is 30 aerial miles of fiber. And then the last section of the county, which is Southeast Berks, has 10 organizations in it and requires 9 aerial miles of fiber. Now, like I said, on these routes, we know that there's other organizations that could potentially want to participate. There's got to be. But somebody with local knowledge of things that either exist there or ones that are planned to be there. I'm sure people are applying for building permits for new commercial construction and or expansion of educational facilities and all those types of things. So, again, we don't know all those, but my guess is in any county that we've worked in, when you take our top level number, in this case 75, I know it's 4 times that. Kelly will agree with me. 4 times the amount of organizations would want this if it was built and could be identified. So that's kind of the engineering side of it, but now I'm going to get into the cost and show you some information that we were actually shocked to gather about this project. So what we did then is we said, we're going to take industry standard cost to install fiber. And the 2 generic ones, again, we focused on aerial. Underground fiber is very expensive. A lot of unknowns in it. So we took the aerial route. We know the poles exist. Somebody wants to put it up, we'll tell you how to do it. New construction is about $30,000 a mile. That doesn't include the electronics because electronics can vary in price and people have their choice. We're just focusing on the construction. And then we looked at the overlash construction, which what that is if you look up on these poles and you see existing fiber, those organizations could run more fiber, or if they have coax, they could run more fiber with the coax and do what's called overlashing. It's about half the price to install fiber if you just attach it to an existing structure. And then what we did is we took the aerial fiber miles for each one of those areas we identified, divided them by the organizations, and came up with a per organization price to build. And when we look at this, and we see the core Berks area to build to those companies, if it was new construction, about $40,000, overlash is about half, okay, to build that. I'm going to focus on this southeastern Berks because that's easier for me to do the math in my head. So there's 10 organizations there, 10 organizations in southeastern Berks. And if you did the overlash, it's about $12,000 per organization to build that fiber. Comes out to $120,000. Areas of these counties spend $120,000 on parks, but they won't spend that money on building a critical piece that technology organizations need to survive. That's the real interesting part of it. So when you look at the top level number and somebody says, oh, it's going to cost $2.3 million, well, when I get into the next number, everybody here is already spending way more money than that on existing broadband, and we don't have the speeds. So what we did with all the technology action plan respondents is, and I was a little bit upset about it because we didn't get the response that we wanted, and I don't think people knew how critical this information was, is we went back to everybody and said, hey, listen, tell us what your broadband speed is and tell us how much you're paying per month. Because what that does, and you'll see these numbers, is in the United States, it's very easy to figure out residential rates. They're advertised all the time from Verizon, Comcast, AT&T. I mean, they're plastered on your screen all the time. They're advertised on TV. Try to get what businesses are paying. Go look it up on the internet. Very difficult to find because nobody wants you to know. Nobody wants you to know what your neighbor organization is paying. So what we did is these are the ones that responded from Berks County on a per meg basis. So this is varied greatly as far as speed. There is somebody who's buying gigabit internet today here in Berks County, and they told us what they're paying, down to people that are buying 50 meg. And this is what it came out to on a per meg. Well, if you look at the A, pay attention to that A. That's an organization inside Berks County. And when you look at that, it's less than $2. I'm going to show you where that's at and how that compares to everything else. But look at all the other ones. And this is the same throughout all of central Pennsylvania. They vary greatly, and I have a slide on that. Here's the more important one. This is other cities in the United States. These three here are actually all gigabit communities. And pay attention to the scale. This is $30. This is 7 cents. $30 a meg versus 7 cents a meg. That's a huge difference. And this guy's the only one that's even approaching sub 2. Everybody else is up here. And also look at the difference between the per meg up and the per meg down. That's how everybody gets suckered into a lot of things, okay? So what we did is we took this a little bit further, and we combined all the technology action plan respondents that came back to us and told us what they were paying. And again, there's multiple people in here that are buying gig. There's people buying 50 meg. There's people buying 100 meg, 300 meg. It's all over the place. But look at the rates. I mean, look at those rates. So what we did is we came up and said, what is the average? $9.37 is the average download rate you're getting. The upload is absurd in pricing. And then when Kelly talked about, we're putting out this RFP for aggregation, why is aggregation important? Because it was done at the educational level, the IU level. Look at what their average rate is in Central PA, $1.72. You know what this is called? This is called broadband discrimination. That's exactly what it is. People are paying a lot of money. And it's not just, some people say, well, it's because they negotiated their contract 3 years ago and they're in a 5-year contract. That's not true. One of the biggest employers in York County just renegotiated their contract. They're paying $30 a meg. $30 a meg, $1,500 a month for 50 meg. And I'll tell you, they're one of the top 5 employers in York County. Just renegotiated. Because what they didn't do is they didn't go to their neighbor and say, how much are you paying? Because it's not published. They're going to sell it to you for whatever they can, just like a street vendor. Whatever you're willing to pay, you're going to pay. Even though they solicited multiple people, but nobody came back with John Smith's price next door. So then what we did is we said, well, what happens, what would it look like if people in Berks County were buying a gig at their current rates? This guy would be paying $300,000 a year. $300,000 a year for a gig. And when you looked at those rates before, these, 7 cents. If he had these rates, you know how much he would pay? $870 a year. $300,000 a year versus $870 a year. That company in York, they're paying $18,000 to $20,000 a year. They'd be paying $870. So as Kelly calls it, it literally is a tax to live here. What's real important about these cities, and it's really interesting, is one is they're getting close to, it can't go much lower than this. But you know why they did this? Because the internet, it's like having a builder build houses. You don't need a dishwasher, but you need electricity. So these guys knew they needed high-speed broadband to attract businesses. It's something that's a requirement, and all the carriers know that too. I mean, that's why content is becoming more important than the infrastructure, because you have to have this infrastructure to attract new businesses. It's just a fact. And nobody's going to move in to our areas that's a technology company like VW or somebody that needs not gig, they're buying 10 gig, 100 gig. They're not going to move in here if their costs are going to be $1 million a year versus all but nothing. Because this is like building roads to attract businesses to come in. It's a requirement. So, like I said, we've done our analysis. We are going to be asking for more pricing. Now people are understanding why we wanted this, because this is really negotiation material for the RFP respondents to say, why are you charging one guy $2 a meg and why are you charging somebody else $50 a meg? That's the real important part about the whole entire project. It's about lowering the cost of broadband in Central PA. So, like I said, everybody's has their technology action plans. The county has one for every organization plus the county, and these presentations would be available to anybody that really wanted them. So, thank you guys for coming. Hope it was very informative.
So those are the numbers. That's what our project's about, was to try and go out and see what is the broadband available. And as we know, you can buy a gigabit in Reading or Doylestown. The question becomes, what does it cost? And what's the rest of the country paying? And is there any county in Pennsylvania interested in developing a strategy to get to Chattanooga, Kansas City, Lafayette, Austin, Texas, Salt Lake City, Omaha, Nebraska, and the list is growing quickly because everyone else in economic development has realized what's going on, is that all these cities and regions are developing gigabit strategies. And that's what we're trying to do with the gigabit revolution here, is to jumpstart it. First in 6 counties, hopefully some other counties are paying attention to what we're doing here today to try and develop strategies to make Pennsylvania more competitive. We've got other challenges other than broadband. This is not going to change, this isn't total game changer. We've got other issues at the state. Has anybody read the newspaper the past year? There's a little battle going on in Harrisburg. Raise your hand if you've read about it or heard about it. We're facing global competition. Every year it gets more competitive. This is one aspect of it, but without it, you're not in a level playing field. Our companies are paying $100,000 more on average for a gigabit in 6 counties, from Adams to York to Lancaster to Berks to Montgomery and Bucks. No other, there's no county that came through this and said their rates are so much better. And John, I know, we've been joking about this. We hope a company comes forward and says, you know what, we don't believe that at all. We're only paying 7 cents a gig or a megabit, right? That's what we were on the phone last night. Like, we hope a company comes forward and says, you know what, we got a better rate. We know it's not going to happen. We've got a small sampling already, but every organization that you know in this state is paying a higher price per gigabit, or as we use, megabit. But gigabit, the revolution now, it's going to be an exabit revolution very soon. So we're very pleased that UFD is making their private investment. We're looking forward to them crossing the Delaware, coming across Bucks and Montgomery. We're going to have a parade down Main Street when they get here. Whatever it takes to shine a flashlight and a spotlight on what's going on in the world here and how it relates to the great companies that we have that are competing on a global stage. The one fascinating thing, all of us in the part of this project, there's so many great companies. There's so many great things happening in our schools that we can't even publicize it enough. Everyone's doing great things. We just want to help them get a better toolbox. So we're very pleased that you came out tonight, or today, and we're very hopeful that you'll stay engaged in the process. May 17th, June 21st. You've got our contact information in the back of the Technology Action Plan, which you can pick up on your way out. Call me 24/7. I mean, we're on email on this thing. Maybe 4 hours a day we sleep. That's how it's been lately. But we're very pleased that you're participating. Your participation is what drives the result. We need more dots. We need more participating organization in between those dots because that makes it more affordable for the capital costs. And we want to help every company. We want to help every government. We want to help every school. Thanks so much for coming out today, and we'll be pleased to answer questions afterwards. Thank you so much. Maybe I was talking fast, but faster than John today. Technology action plans, your organizations, they're in the back.